Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Believe in best.
Coming up tonight, Minister of Economic Affairs speaks to VAT performance. A former Prime Minister grades the New Day government. And let's take a look at the Bahamian influence at Jazz in the Gardens. Welcome to our news, the weekend edition. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Megan Shepard. Topping news tonight, more than 2 months after value-added tax was reduced from 12% to 10%. Minister for Economic Affairs, Michael Halkita, says government revenue collection has not taken a dive. In fact, Halkita says it remains on pace with projections.
It's early days because this is March, so we would have the experience of the returns really for January. The returns for February will be coming soon. So far, it's holding steady. Does not appear to be any reduction in terms of what the government has taken in, which is consistent with what we had forecast, but again, it's early days.
Halkita says so far, VAT returns have only come in for January, and it will take at least another month of returns before officials can determine more concrete collection trends. What is certain, according to Halkita, is that the decision to reopen the economy has translated into a much-needed boost for revenue collection after nearly 2 years of operating under a state of emergency brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic.
So far, we haven't seen a reduction in the amount collected. Now that is as well a function, we believe, of the opening of the economy and the strength of the economy that we see in the tourism sector, etc.
Halkita adds that the government's Revenue Policy Committee is also keeping an eye on new revenue streams. Meantime, the Right Honorable Perry Christie has been a man that is never short on words, and he spoke extensively to the performance of the current PLP administration. Our Sasha Lightbourne has that story.
I'm pleased with what they're doing, and in fact, Mr. Davis has allowed me to come in to make some recommendations. And I'm hoping as I look to those recommendations I'm making, that some of them will materialize, you know, like for example, BAMSI, like materialize into real dynamic action in our country that will result positively in improving the lives of Bahamians.
The Davis administration has been in office for just over 6 months. Some may say they've done well, while others may share a different view. Former Prime Minister Perry Christie shared with the media this week just exactly how he feels about the government's first 6 months in office.
When there is a major division in the country, the government has to make a decision, okay, on that. And the government has to make a decision and be prepared to stand or fall on that decision. And so I'm very, very supportive of them and these major social initiatives that Mr. Ryan Clint is bringing forth for his colleagues, or the colleagues bringing forth for themselves to look at. And I'm hoping, therefore, that they simply continue to demonstrate the courage of their conviction, the courage of their belief in that.
Christie also noted that he's happy that current Prime Minister Philip Davis is dealing directly with legislation on gender-based violence issues, including marital rape.
We've had this extraordinary level of experience. Most decisions we've gone, good or bad, mistakes we've made, we know how to avoid them. And we can be very useful to a government.
Meanwhile, the former Prime Minister says he believes that both he and former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram still have a lot to offer from a backseat position for any government in power.
Had this extraordinary level of experience. Most decisions we've gone, good or bad, mistakes we've made, we know how to avoid them. And we can be very useful to a government.
Reporting for Our News Weekend, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
Minister of Grand Bahama Ginger Moxie addressing the Grand Bahama Business Outlook this past week, announcing Empower Grand Bahama, a $5,000 micro-grant program focused on creative entrepreneurs and tourism product enhancement. Moxie telling attendees that the initiative will be supported by the Small Business Development Corporation and the Tourism Development Corporation.
The $5,000 is to start. What we believe is that this can be the beginning of an ecosystem connector, per se, for tourism product delivery on Grand Bahama Island. All we ask is that the products are authentically Bahamian. We want to be able to assist in the revolution of changing out the made in somewhere else to made in the Bahamas. We want to be the place where the cottage industry thrives, fulfilling another mandate of our blueprint for change.
The National Gender-Based Violence Discriminatory Law Review Forum report, obtained by Our News earlier this week, recommends a number of gender equality laws. However, Cale Campbell reports that some women's rights activists have mixed views.
The report from last month's forum recommended the criminalization of marital rape, legislation of abortion, and decriminalization of sex work. Director of activist group Equality Bahamas, Alicia Wallace, said the last publicly available draft of the gender-based violence bill should not be passed, as it still does not acknowledge marital rape as rape and the 1-year time restriction for a woman to report the rape. Wallace also took issue with the draft as it stands, saying consent of the Attorney General is needed for the case to be pursued.
It's important to have more time to be able to report because, particularly if you're living with the person, it's not safe and in many cases not at all possible to make a report while still living there. And we know that on average, it takes a woman 7 tries to successfully leave and stay out of a violent relationship, particularly when living in the same quarters. So we want to make sure that people are able to report when it's safe to do so, when they're outside of that space.
Wallace said it's been the pandering to naysayers and misogynists as to why things have stayed the same.
We need an administration that is serious about women's rights, that is serious about eliminating gender-based violence, and understands its obligations, not only to international treaty bodies, but to the people themselves, and in particular to people in situations of vulnerability, including women, LGBTQI plus people, migrant people, domestic workers, elderly people, and young people who are experiencing this kind of violence. Their obligation is to us and to ensure that we have protection under the law.
United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women member Marian Bethel said the government's focus on gender equality legislation since 2018 is due to the pressure from intergovernmental organizations.
This demand must come from within our country. I mean, we as people need to have to want this, you know. I'm only referring to these international conventions because they are also useful, very useful. So back to your question then, in 2018, we appeared before these 2 human rights bodies and had to show some kind of forward movement from, I think it was 2012 when we were there last.
Nonetheless, Bethel encouraged activists to use the mandates of intergovernmental bodies such as the United Nations to bring about societal and legislative change to gender-based issues.
Human rights groups around the world and here in the Bahamas can rely on these international covenants, as I've said before, these international conventions, to demand the criminalization of marital rape, because the state party has an obligation under these international conventions to do that.
For Our News, I'm Cale Campbell.
Still to come, the port CEO elated about the lifting of the mask mandate. That's coming up when Our News returns.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Samir.
You're watching Our News. Welcome back. Happy that the mask mandate for cruise passengers was lifted. The CEO of Nassau Cruise Ports, Mike Morris, says it affected the experience for cruise passengers, adding the rationalization that the rest of the world was not requiring persons to wear a mask outside. Thus, he did not understand why the Bahamas was still under such protocols. The port CEO says had the mask mandate continued, it would have affected the number of arrivals coming to the Bahamas.
When they're investing in a vacation, whether it's a land-based vacation or a cruise vacation, they want to make sure that there's no disappointment associated with that vacation experience. And so we need to make sure that that experience when they're here in Nassau or in Eleuthera or in Ragged Island or in Abaco or in Bimini is very satisfying and pleasant, and we don't have police or some other entity running behind everybody saying, put your mask back on and all that kind of stuff. So.
Morris says the Bahamas is heading in the right direction, expecting the CDC travel advisory warning to drop from 3 to 2. Still, he says the cruise industry continues to invest in itself. When asked whether the CDC travel advisory warning being at level 4 affected business, Morris says it did. And with mask mandates being alleviated, he predicts cruise tourism numbers will continue to increase.
How are we kind of transitioning out of this, fully covered up and, washing every 5 seconds and all the rest of it? And that is if we want to get and tap into the wider tourism market, we are going to, reasonably and appropriately relax some of these protocols so that people feel more, they're not uninhibited about traveling.
The Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute is looking to expand its offerings in the very near future. BTVI President Dr. Robert Robertson says they are working with quite a few agencies to create new certification programs.
There are a number of key areas in the country that need certified people to work in those areas. One of them, for example, is in allied health. So we're working with Doctors Hospital to try to come up with some programs basically like health management in terms of data, licensed practical nurses, those types of things. So we'll be doing that. In addition, we're working with the Office of the Prime Minister on another exciting initiative to develop a environmental technician. That's a very important initiative. Climate change is a big deal for countries around the world, and so we're working at putting an environmental technician program together that likely will start as early as the summer of 2022. There's also interest in aviation. I mean, as an island nation, people use planes to get around a lot, and there's not a lot of ability to repair those planes in country. And so we are working with a couple of companies on the possibility of providing some aviation training here at BTVI as well. So we're constantly trying to respond to the
Currently, BTVI offers certifications in nearly 24 subjects. Dr. Robertson says they want to do a lot more, but that will depend on funding.
So we're constantly trying to respond to the needs of businesses and industry, obviously within our financial constraints, but we really want to stay up with what's happening in the country, and so we're looking at those 3 areas right now.
And when our news comes back from the break, we go down memory lane with a song from way back and a potential for local business in South Florida. We have the details when our news returns.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Salute.
Bahamians have been immigrating to South Florida for decades. Many communities bear the evidence of Bahamian influence. Even the recent Jazz in the Gardens Music Festival had a slice of Bahamian cuisine in the lineup of eateries. Tonight, our Jerome Sawyer introduces us to the East of Miami, a uniquely Bahamian vendor.
This is the famous Bahamian potion. They won't tell me what's in it. Anyway, let's see how this goes.
They are called East of Miami. It's an all-Bahamian setup known for great Bahamian food.
Crack lobster, crack shrimp, crack conch, we have crack fish. Everything is crack fries. And we doing it Bahamian style right here. We have also the conky boat. Everything conky going in that. We have fried conch fritters, and we also have conch salad ready for you, made like home.
Cindy Smith is the brains and brawns behind the business. They are a traveling setup, taking the taste of the Bahamas to festivals and events around the United States.
I came here when I was 14, and some people still say, oh wow, you still speak just like you right out of the Bahamas. I am. I brought it with me. I never let it go, and I love my culture. I actually was like, I'm gonna go back home one day and retire. And then as long as I was here, and I was a nurse here and everything, and I just said, you know what? Why? I don't have to go back home. My culture is here already. So I just took it on, and we embraced it. Me, my whole family. This is my whole family. My daughter, my son-in-law, my husband, just family, Bahamian. And we just keep it going. We love our culture.
And it's all hands on deck with all things Bahamian.
We're from the Bahamas. We have to represent. Any event we go to, we got to show the people that where we from and what we do. It's all the good hands, I'm telling you. Because only good hands prepare good food.
Even the conch salad, a hugely popular menu item, has that unique Bahamian touch.
To represent the Bahamas, to be here, to show Americans, Jamaicans, or any other country, represent the Bahamas is something solid, and I love doing it.
What makes your conch salad so special?
Because we beat the hell out of it. We come around and we want to expose the Bahamas, what we do here, over there. We bring 305 to the 242, we put it together, and we just decided, hey, this is what we're going to do here.
And customers can't seem to get enough.
It's a real 242 connection right here. East of Miami. And my boy TJ over here, they cooking it up. They serving it real good. We love it.
The only thing that's missing off that conch salad is the piston. That's the only thing that's missing. What you know about piston? Boy, what?
Reporting for our news, I'm Jerome Sawyer.
Neighboring Miami Gardens has always been a favorite to Bahamians, whether settling in South Florida or visiting. A Bahamian American serving on the city council is looking to create some business opportunities. Shannon Ighodaro is the first Bahamian American elected to the City of Miami City Council. Miami Gardens is home to many Bahamians in the diaspora and a favorite of Bahamian visitors who come annually in numbers. The recent Jazz in the Gardens Music Festival welcomed thousands back to the highly coveted R&B Music Festival. A large contingent of Bahamians were part of the audience, happy to be back after a 2-year break due to COVID.
When you are at a place of authority and you have a seat at the table, I think it gives you an opportunity, and I'll speak clearly to the City of Miami Gardens. This is the first time that we have Bahamian, authentic Bahamian vendors being represented, and I think that's an amazing opportunity to really bring some of that cultural feeling to people who are coming from all over the world.
This meant that east of Miami, a fully Bahamian mobile eatery presented a full menu of Bahamian seafood dishes to festival goers last weekend.
My dream is to have more local acts, Bahamian local acts, to grace the main stage of Jazz in the Gardens. In 2020, when I got elected, one of the first things I did was to sponsor a resolution within the City of Miami Gardens to recognize the amazing accomplishments of Bahamians.
Among the many festival revelers was Tourism Minister Chester Cooper. He shared his observations of the potential for an event like this.
So there's an incredible connection between Miami Gardens in particular and the Bahamas, and we must find a way to leverage this in terms of business, in terms of sharing our culture, and generally in terms of exchanges between Florida and the Bahamas.
And still to come, a look at weather for the next few days. And we're going to hear a tune that we've not heard in a very long time. That's coming up when our news returns.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Salute.
Welcome back to our News Weekend Edition. Warm and sunny earlier today. Let's take a look at what the weather will be like for the next few days. Lovely as the morning flower. Remember that? Here's a little snippet to remember Lovely, the Bahamian song artist who brought us the song Lovely. Enjoy.
Ital, yeah, oh, yeah, something called Lovely. So, why I will always see your face. You won't go to stay. Love me as the morning flower. You never see me again. So lovely, I do love you so.
And on that note, we end our newscast for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to tune in right here tomorrow night. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Megan Shepherd. Have a lovely evening.